When you think of organizational growth, do you think about adding another team member or maybe a whole department? And then when you're thinking about adding that person or department, do you think that it's going to scale in a predictable way? If you go from 5 employees to 10 or 10 to 20, the assumption is often simple. More people should create proportionally more value. But human connection doesn't work that way because human connections are more like networks, and networks follow different rules. Imagine you invented the first telephone. It's pretty cool, but it's useless until you make the second phone. And now there's value. Now a conversation becomes possible. And now a third telephone. Some interesting things start to happen. You don't just gain one new connection. You've gained several. And as more telephones are added, the number of possible conversations grows dramatically. This observation became known as Metcalfe's law. The idea is that the value of a network grows not simply because more things are added, but because more relationships become possible. The value is not in the device or the people added, it's in the connections that are made. Now, if you're like me, you've thought for a long time about teams and team dynamics the way that engineers think about machines. 1 employee equals a certain number of outputs. 10 employees equals just 10 times that output. 20 employees, etc. You get the idea. But that is not what happens. The moment you add another person to a team, you don't simply add another person to the team. You add a number of new relationships and conversations and perspectives and opportunities and misunderstandings and collaboration and conflict. The new employee doesn't just contribute individually. It can change the whole system. This helps to explain something that you've probably experienced if you are a leader of any number of people. A highly talented person joins a team. Everyone expects performance to improve immediately. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. It's not because the individual lacks talent. It's because talent alone is not what creates value. Interaction creates value. A brilliant employee who struggles to collaborate may create less value than a moderately talented employee who strengthens trust, communication, and cooperation across the organization. Most organizations measure individual capability. Far fewer measure the quality of relationships. Yet relationships often determine whether capability becomes performance. Organizations track revenue, expenses and productivity and vacancy and utilization, but there's another asset that often receives very little attention: connection quality, trust, communication, psychological safety, cross-functional relationships, and informal networks. These factors rarely appear on a dashboard, yet they influence nearly every outcome leaders care about. When communication breaks down, performance suffers. When trust deteriorates, performance suffers. When relationships weaken, performance suffers. Not because people suddenly become less capable, but because the network becomes less effective. So this starts to create a new leadership question. Instead of asking, how do I get more from my people? A better question is, how do I strengthen the connections between my people? A side note here, there is a company that will do team assessments and look into some of these things. It's called A Different Kind. So look them up. A Different Kind. Okay. Why do we want to strengthen the connections between people? Because every conversation influences the network. Every meeting, every difficult discussion, every act of accountability, every act of avoidance, all of that influences the network and the performance of the team. The organization is constantly evolving through these interactions, whether we recognize it or not. Very few leaders focus on the spaces between the people. But that is where the real value lives. The value of a network is not determined solely by the number of people. It's determined by the quality of the connections between them. Organizations are no different. Next time, Next episode, we're going to take this a step further because hiring isn't just about adding a person, it changes the whole system. And the most important things about a new hire often can't be predicted in advance. They emerge after the interactions begin. That's next time.